If you use Excel for lists of data, you need to know about tables. Let's look at how to be more efficient in Excel by working with tables. Most lists of Excel data are formatted like this as a data range or data list. And so although sorting and filtering features work with a data list, Excel's table features also make everyday data tasks much easier. If you want to sort or filter your data in Excel, it's important, however, to set it up correctly, whether it's a data range or a table. So here are some tips to keep in mind. First, make sure that you have your data organized in rows and columns with no blank rows or columns within the dataset. Blank cells are fine. This means that if you have any introductory titles or other content, make sure that there are blank rows or columns separating that from the core dataset. Of course, there should be similar data in each column so that the sorting and filtering features will work. This means you might need to clean up the data, do some normalization, and check to make sure that you have consistency. Another key is to have unique column headings formatted differently than the data. This doesn't have to be anything big. This simply means that they might be bold, different font, something that helps Excel distinguish between what are the headers versus the data. The key is to create an island of data so Excel can recognize it without the need for us to highlight ahead of time. Once you have your data formatted correctly, let's look at how to create a table from an existing data range. Now in Excel, there are 3 different ways to create or convert a range of cells into a table. First, we want to be anywhere in this range. It's also good to note here is that although the column headings don't have to be on row 1, if they were not, we would want to have a blank row, at least one, separating that from any titles that might be above it. Additionally, the column heading should only be on one row, so don't stack multiple rows together to come up with those column headings. Our first way to create a table is from the Home tab, and here we have Format as a Table. We'll come back to this in just a moment. Second, we could go to Insert, and here is Table. This is also associated with a keyboard shortcut, Control-T. That is our third option. So let's go back to our Home tab here, and we'll choose Format as Table. So notice this is one of the reasons why a table can be handy, and that is to automatically apply formatting. Here, I'll just pick one of these options here. The first part here is to confirm that data range. So and notice here my dancing ants or my marquee. This is where Excel believes the table data is. And this is one of the reasons why we want to make sure the data is set up correctly so you don't have to highlight it ahead of time. Confirm if your table has headers. Once you've established these elements about the table, in the Create Table dialog box here, choose OK. And here we have a table. One of the first things you might notice is that Excel not only applies the formatting, but it automatically enables filtering. So in our column headings, here we have the drop downs for automatic filtering. But what if we want to create a table from scratch? How can we start this? In a worksheet where you want the table first, simply highlight an approximate range that represents the dimensions for that table. Keeping in mind, you could always add more columns, add more rows. Next, use one of the previous options that we looked at. Here I could choose Insert Table or simply press Control-T. Here we have that Create Table dialog box, and the range looks good, but I do want Excel to create headers for me, even though I don't even have that content in here yet, and choose OK. So now I have the structure of a table. I can apply different formatting to it, change those column labels, and continue working with this. So why do we even care? What are some of the benefits of a table versus a data range or list? So although many sorting and filtering techniques are available to you when data is formatted as a data range, a table gives you some additional options. As we saw, one of those is the ability to apply different styles or designs to that table. And when we're in a table, notice here that we have that Table Design tab that automatically is activated. So this gives us access to a lot of other features. If I click away from the table, it goes away. I'm in the table, there's Table Design. So from here, we could quickly upgrade the look here. We could change that style. Now these colors and these combinations are coming from the associated theme, whatever theme is being used by this workbook. So that's something that can be changed under the Page Layout tab. Let's say I want a little bit different look here. I can just hover over these and notice how this changes. Becomes really easy. You can even set up your own table styles if you have something that's very specific, a certain look, branding for your organization, for instance, or if you'd like to revert back to the formatting you had applied earlier, this is where you can choose none. Now, it's not available when we first build the table, but it is an option here. I'll simply pick another option here and I've applied that new style. Now, one of the other advantages has to do with the table size and dimensions. So it's easy to quickly expand the table as well. Let's look at this. If we come to the corner here, what if I realize that I want to have 2 more columns and maybe 5 more rows? Well, I can move over to the columns or drag down and I have some more rows. So that becomes a really easy thing to do. The other option I could have picked for that is once again under the table design, and that is resize table. So if I want different dimensions, I could reconfigure what these could be, either by manually changing this range or even by highlighting exactly what that range should be. And now I've redefined that table size. Simply OK. Creating a table also creates a table range name, such as we see here in the Table Design ribbon tab, and this table is Table 2. Now, these range names can be edited to be more descriptive and clearer, especially when the range is being used in formulas or even pivot tables. So the table range names follow the same naming rules as other Excel ranges. Here, I'm going to change this Sales Table. Now, that means I also don't want to have a space here. I can only start with a letter or the underscore character. I'll simply hit enter. And now this range name is Sales Table. To learn more about range names in Excel, click the link above or look for the link in the description of this video. Another benefit is working with AutoFilter. When the table was created, the column headings were automatically set up as an AutoFilter. And this gives us the option to sort and filter the table to only show specific rows. AutoFilter options can also be added to a standard data list. With a table, you can also add visual filtering options with the slicer. Slicers are an easy and amazing option for filtering your Excel data. I'll cover slicers in a separate video. They can only be used when your data is formatted as a table. One of the other things you might notice is that as you scroll down, notice how the table headers replace the column letters in the worksheet header. Now, if the freeze panes feature is enabled, it overrides this functionality. This means that freeze panes is not required. Tables also support calculated columns. For instance, there's a sum function in the totals column to calculate the quarterly data. If I insert 2 more rows, simply select these, right-click, and here is Insert. Notice that the sum function's automatically copied down in this table. With a table, Excel can also remove duplicate rows automatically. We'll look at how to remove duplicate rows in another video. Look in the description of this video for other related Excel videos. What are your options for formatting tables? Well, after creating the table, you can control the formatting by choosing options in the Table Design tab. Remember, this is a contextual ribbon tab that's only available when you're in a table. Under the table style options, we can turn on or off our header row. You can also enable exactly what you want to have highlighted. So for instance, if I want to see the last column formatted a little differently, here now it is bold. And I may want to do the same with my first column. We could even apply banded columns if that's helpful from a reference point of view. But because we also have the alternating rows, I'm going to turn that back off. And finally, one of the real advantages of a table is the ability to add a special row at the bottom designated for totals. And this is really helpful when you are filtering your data. Here I'll add that total row. So now we have a total of this last column, but we can also add totals for the others. So for my quarter 1, not only could I do a sum, but notice the other functions that are available. I'll add the sum for the other quarters. And maybe you'd like to get a count for another function. So for my second column here, let's add a count. So we currently have 76 entries. One of the other things to make note of here is I have a total that's this is a straggler or leftover from when this was a data range. And so this was totaling up the data. The challenge that we have with something like this is that you probably experience this when you have a data list or a data range and you filter the data, any totals do not update. They do not reflect the filtered data. These totals in the total row do. Let's look at that. So from my filter, let's say that we want to see only gadgets. Notice how those numbers change. That total row then is dynamic based upon filtered data. I can see I have 20 entries. Here are the totals for those quarters. But this other total does not update. Even if it's referencing this entire range, it is still totaling every single one of those records. And so that's why these kinds of formulas are not as helpful as working with that total row. And if we make further changes, let's say we filter only by certain regions. Once again, that total row is dynamic and really helpful. And that's our look at the power and flexibility of tables in Excel. To learn more ways to be productive with Microsoft Excel or to join my free tips newsletter, visit thesoftwarepro.com/Excel. If this training was helpful, please subscribe to this channel for other time-saving software tips. Thanks for watching.